Summer League has wrapped up and the rookie we saw the most of was Josh Christopher. The number 24 pick, he was not only Houston's last selection, but is quite a bit higher than the consensus on where he would probably go, and there were even suggestions that his close friendship with Jalen Green influenced Houston's decision. Christopher quietened those detractors and is enjoying a lot of positivity from Rockets Twitter as he averaged 17 points, 4 rebounds and 4 assists in just 27 minutes of play per game. As Green pulled out of Summer League due to injury and Alperen Şengün departed for Turkey, Christopher took on a larger role with the ball in his hands while being tasked with guarding the other team's ball handler on defense. On a roster with John Wall, Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr., Christian Wood, and even guys like Eric Gordon and Daniel House, this role probably won't translate when the regular season starts. How he can make himself a part of the rotation will be an interesting question to follow as his NBA career starts for real in a couple of months. The first thing that jumped out about Josh Christopher was his defense, with Rafael Stone saying in a press conference he thought he could play like Jrue Holiday, which is high praise considering Holiday is perhaps the best point-of-attack defender in the entire league. Christopher likes to pressure the ball handler and get in their face, which produced some dividends which you can see here. Portland wants to run a play for a shooter, curling around stagger screens on the weak side, but Christopher blocks Kobe Simmons' view and basically stops this play from starting. He stops early offense here and uses the sideline as a second defender. He cuts off the driver here and stops him going downhill. And he had more plays that stood out immediately to even someone only half watching casually, such as this deflection, being active with his arms and poking the ball away. Defenders are going to get a lot of praise for full court pressure like this, and he steals the inbound here to force a turnover under the basket. Really good activity and energy, which generates real momentum in a game. Unfortunately, too often Christopher was beaten when trying to pick his man up full court or at half court, taking himself out of a play and exposing the defense behind him. One of the most memorable plays of Summer League was Gruber's game-winning block against Portland, but what's forgotten is Christopher letting his man completely blow by him to force that. Summer League is played in transition and in open court. It's a different game to the NBA, but I would personally rather Josh get back into his defensive stance and rely more on team defense rather than going for the more showy full-court pressure when this is the end result half of the time. This last play here, he's a complete turnstile, offering no resistance and getting caught completely square, not in a proper defensive stance. He gets manipulated easily by crafty guards. A little head fake here to the screeners commits him one way and then a crossover gets his man downhill with ease. Here the ball handler is attacking, then decelerates before accelerating again. His slow to fast burst catches Christopher off guard and he flies past him as he's on his back heels. Against Killian Hayes, he shows a lack of discipline and lunges at the ball for no real reason, which Hayes takes as his cue to move. And here again, he can't keep up with a change of pace and is blown by once more. Defending the perimeter should be his calling card defensively. Here he's doing a great job pressuring the much taller Evan Mobley, but just kind of gives up halfway and allows Mobley a clean look. Houston fans have seen that around the back steal attempt many times from another Arizona State guard, and it's always the sign you just got beat. His weakness rears its head again when closing out shooters, where he's often beaten with little resistance. This is at least more excusable as it's something many young players take time to improve on. One silver lining is he can have active arms, and while the footwork and angles might not be perfect here, he gets a strip. We'll move to off-ball now, and Christopher showed some good help instincts. He moves towards the cutter when it looks like he's about to have a free run to the basket. He's really strong moving to the baseline to help deflect the pass to the opposite corner. He's helping the helper under the basket as Jalen Green doubles. He played a key part in what I thought was Houston's best defensive possession as a team the whole tournament. Josh switches onto Isaac Okora's zipper cut up the lane as Anthony Lamb gets caught on the screen. He can't just abandon Mobley by the rim, so he moves at the exact right second onto the driver to help. He starts boxing out when he thinks the shot is coming, but then moves to pick up the man on the perimeter when it doesn't, quickly changing direction when the drive comes to get back to Mobley and help with the rebound. Cleveland snags it, but Lamb shows good footwork and they get the 24-second violation. On this play, he does a great job rotating to a cutter in transition, protecting the rim is the most important thing in transition defence, so this was a really good play. When it comes to sticking to his own assignment off ball, Christopher has problems. He gets caught ball watching and loses track of his man 2 possessions in a row here. On this play, he moves with him to the paint but stays there as he leaves to the corner, without Christopher noticing until it's too late. The driver even picks up his dribble nowhere near the basket and well covered, and Christopher still stands frozen. In this play, he's caught ball watching again and he gives up an open layup off a backdoor cut. For full disclosure, I haven't watched any of his game from college, but this was one of the negatives on his scouting report. He needs to be more present and aware off ball defensively, and he needs to do that quickly. Something that really frustrated me watching Christopher was when Houston played a gap defense. He did nothing to help deter the on-ball driver. Watch here again, he's clearly sagging away off his man and in position to help himself onto the drive. However, when it comes, he does nothing. My very first blog post on Tea and Rockets was basically an ode to PJ Tucker's defense. And watch how he stunts here at the driver, lunging into the lane to deter the attack and quickly recovering to the shooter in anticipation of a pass. Now watch Josh Christopher here as he's indecisive on whether to help after the driver beats Jalen Green gambling. In this clip, he's a pedestrian, watching rather than helping. With good coaching and discipline, he can improve. This isn't to suggest this is who he'll be forever, or even on opening night, just a reflection of who he was in Summer League and where he has to get better. I'm going to show some clips now of Josh doing better staying with off-ball movement. He covers the cutter here, although he goes flying on contact, another thing he needs to work on. He absolutely can be a good off-ball defender like here, staying with the cutter, arms up, blocking the pass. He's just very inconsistent. Some players flash those instincts and that discipline, and they really dedicate themselves to it and improve. Others don't. If he wants to be a positive on the defensive side of the floor, he'll have to be one of those players that obsessively watches the film and does all he can to get better. We'll move now to offense. Christopher had the ball in his hands a lot in Summer League and gained many plaudits for his mid-range game. He shot 50%, going 8 of 16 outside the paint. They were all self-created, finishing off a polished move, showing a variety of handles to get separation. Many Rockets fans yearn for the mid-range after it was essentially outlawed under Daryl Morey, and there's something so pure about seeing shots like this go in. I've seen some different numbers for what he shot in the mid-range at college. According to Sam Vecini, likely taking numbers from Synergy, Christopher made just 31.9% of his mid-range shots in Arizona State, which is an awful number. Another website, CBB Analytics, however, has him hitting 36.7% outside the paint, which is actually above average at college level. It's also important to note that while Summer League was a small sample size at just 5 games played, he only played 15 for Arizona, so we just don't have a lot of data. He's probably not going to be hitting the 50% he did in Vegas though, that's just an unfair bar to set. Former Milwaukee Bucks Director of Basketball Research Seth Partnow has done some great work explaining the so-called death of the mid-range. The decline of shots from this area is undeniable. At the rim, shots have stayed largely the same, mid-range twos have essentially been swapped for threes, but that doesn't tell the full story. As Partnow explains, the big decline has come on assisted mid-range shots. Whether you're a star or a role player, there has been a marked decline, and that shot has basically become extinct for low-usage players. This makes complete sense because there is no reason for such a shot as this to be a two-pointer. Most of these shots are now pick and pops where the big goes behind the line for the extra point. But here we see unassisted mid-range shots, and you can see that despite the three-point explosion and pace and space tactics of today's game, there has only been a marginal decline over the last decade and a half. You'll hear commentators recycle some spiel about what analytics says, usually only when a player hits one of these shots, but analytics basically says you can take these shots if you can make them. The best players can, the high-usage stars still use a mid-range pull-up as a valuable weapon in their arsenal. So where does this leave Josh Christopher? Well, it depends on how high his ceiling is. You wouldn't want to see Christopher take shots like these, especially early in the clock, if the Rockets still had James Harden and Chris Paul on the court. And you might not want to see him taking them with Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. either. This is the sort of selfish play and poor shot selection scouting reports warned about. Even if he's a lead ball handler off the bench, you want him getting to the rim, although of course being able to hit a mid-range jumper is still an important part of his game. This is a better example of shot selection. He snakes the pick and roll and has a bit of daylight with the centre in drop coverage.
Also here they take away the rim, he has a lot of space so he has to let that fly.
As a driver, Christopher had a lot of success in Vegas. He got to the rim in isolation, beating his man with a crossover here. In this clip, he has the change of direction, acceleration, stops on a dime and hits a perfect fadeaway with great balance. He gets downhill as Bllen opens up and hits a tough finish. He had two really good players on back-to-back possessions against Detroit, driving hard and making tough shots. He uses his flashy crossovers on this sequence. Josh did have some sloppiness he needs to tighten up. Here he does a good job splitting with defenders but loses his handle on the push, which gives the defender enough time to rotate over. And in this clip he runs into trouble and travels as he picks up his dribble. But overall he was very strong attacking the basket for Houston, and his potential jumped off the court, whether as a secondary driver next to a point guard or as a lead ball handler off the bench. Next, I wanted to show some examples of Christopher's dribbling and patience, earning him a favourable matchup on the wing of a centre. He gets past Cole Anthony and goes under the rim and brings the centre back out. He has him in isolation but misses the three. He does it again here on this switch but completely bricks the shot. This brings us to what was the biggest disappointment in his game, the 3-point shooting. Discounting a couple of heaves, he shot 6 of 30 at Summer League, just 20%. Whether it was off a catch or off a dribble, he missed badly. He missed left, he missed right, too short and too long. It was just a disastrous shooting performance. According again to Sam Vecini, in college he hit just 31% on catch and shoot threes and 28% on pull-ups. I hear a lot of he'll figure it out or he's going to be fine when people talk about draft prospects who can't shoot. I don't see how anyone can casually just say this about Josh Christopher. There are real concerns here he'll never be able to figure it out and be a good shooter in the NBA. If he's hitting around 30% for his NBA career, that really restricts his value to any team in the league. If he can't fix it, he better become a relentless driver and finisher and a much more consistent lockdown defender to carve out a role. He's wide open here on this corner three and it's not even close. He shot 1 of 10 on corner threes. The Peachtree Hoops blog did an excellent breakdown on Josh Christopher before the draft and noted his windmill-like form when catching the ball to his right. He wants to shoot from his left hip, which means he has to perform a weird sort of circle to move right to left and back up again. This will need a lot of work to fix and continue to happen in Summer League. You can see here he's pushing his arms left away from his body on the shot, which causes his legs to fall out of balance, and this is just awful form. It's a little bit tighter to his body on this one, but still has that windmill effect. There's a better view on this clip with the camera right behind him. I'll pause here so you can see where the ball is. In his defence, he's off balance because he was facing away from the rim on the handoff and had to do the sort of rip-through move to get his angle at the basket. But good shooters are able to get their looks off in tight spaces, and being able to get into your motion off balance is key to playing off ball and shooting off screens. Above the break, where most pull-up shots come from, he might need to get stronger in his legs to generate more shot power. You can see the delay in his release to help the push-off, and he has to exaggerate the kick out on his legs for momentum. Shot mechanics is not something I'm usually comfortable talking about, as it's not really my area, so if you disagree let me know in the comments. I know others have brought this up about Christopher, and his issues are fairly evident, so I wanted to include this even though I usually defer to others on mechanics. The delay on his release point can cause him to get his shot blocked, like this. It's incredibly difficult for someone his size to average double-digit points in the NBA while shooting less than 34% from free. The good news is, as we saw, Josh is a strong driver. In college he shot 71% at the rim, which was about 6 percentage points higher than average, and had him as one of the absolute best finishers in the game, especially considering nearly 2/3 of his shots were unassisted. The problem was, it was low volume. This is his volume chart, showing the percentage of field goal attempts which came at different distances. His 17.6% volume at the rim was significantly below college average. Now, the average is skewed by centres, but it was still quite a bit lower than most guards and wings taken around his slot in the draft. Taking nearly as many long twos as he did shots at the rim just can't be his shot profile in the NBA. It needs to be much more efficient than that. Fortunately, it looked a lot better in Summer League. There were questions about his fit in Arizona with other ball-dominant guards, and the lineup issues may have affected his shot profile. This probably won't go away in Houston, as they have a lot of mouths to feed, but at least in Summer League he was getting to the rim more. 43% of his shots came close to the rim according to this graphic from SIS Hoops on Twitter, which is much better and where he needs to be consistently in the NBA, if not even higher.
Lastly, I just wanted to note that his tendency to bring the ball to his left on shots seemingly caused him huge issues driving right, and defenders gladly forced him that way. You can see how good he was inside the arc shooting when he was on the left side of the court, but it's the polar opposite on the right side. Again, thankfully this didn't play out in Summer League, and he shot extremely well going right.
We'll move on now to some other areas of his play, and in transition, coach Will Weaver wanted whoever got the ball under the basket to take it coast to coast. Josh was aggressive and had some really good finishes, but when he slowed down he couldn't draw fouls or finish as the defense collapsed hard on him. He also maybe lacked a bit of vision here not to throw it out to the shooters on the perimeter. And on this play he gets himself out of trouble with the pass, but it's clear he only sees this at the last second and wasn't really thinking ahead on the play, but being able to react and get out of a jam is still an important skill. Overall, Christopher's passing was a pleasant surprise in Summer League. Toronto made the mistake a couple of times of sending help from a strong side corner, and he hit the open man quickly and accurately. Tasked with bringing the ball up, he sees this pass as Jalen Green improvises and cuts the baseline. This time, Green follows the play and comes off 2 screens, but Christopher needs to tighten up his passing to be a consistent play starter. He's also a little bit lazy with his pass to Green, which Cade intercepts. But he does nail this pass on the empty side pick and roll for the potential assist for KJ Martin. Most impressive was perhaps his constant feeding of a red-hot Armani Brooks in the final game against Toronto. From the very start of the game and throughout, he showed real point guard skills in finding the hot hand. Josh can make the first pass early out of penetration, a simple but smart read to hit the open man when they send help. Sometimes though he gets tunnel vision, and here he misses the open Armani Brooks and instead attempts a crazy circus shot that only has a small chance of going in. Again, he runs into trouble here with his head down and gets stuffed with players watching around the perimeter. He couldn't quite keep up as he increased the degree of difficulty. He misdirects this ambitious kick-ahead pass. He coughs the ball up on this tight side pick and roll. And this pass to a cutter is really difficult and he can't pull it off. Overall, I thought Christopher flashed some real skill as a passer and decision maker, and I'm going to finish up with some clips here to show that. He was a little inconsistent, but hopefully with more reps and many years in the NBA, this will blossom into a real strength. Lastly, something of a random note, but I thought he developed a nice 2-man game with Alperen Şengün. This about wraps up my video on Josh Christopher. I think we were all impressed by some of the hustle plays he had, and here he is fighting with big men to keep them off the boards and help with team rebounding, something Houston really needs a lot of going into next season. In his first game against Cleveland, he was getting a lot of praise for his tenacity. He did a great job down low against the much taller Evan Mobley. He looked fired up.
I love this defensive player where he switches out hard, the key to good switching, and he carries on with the intensity and pressure. He had some real highlights. He stuck with his man off ball here, went under the screen, then over, while using his arms well and staying in front to contest. And he had some good plays throughout too. This was mostly the work of Şengün, but it was still a good trap and transition move. And this was a really good closeout and contest. When he's active with his arms, he can strip a guard coming around the screen. He sees this 2-1 set coming and stops it. But there are trade-offs to this. On the very first play of the very first game, he thinks a handoff is coming, so steps up and gets the backdoor cut treatment. He sees a screen coming here, so commits that way, and the guard changes direction on him. The NBA is full of smart, quick decision makers who will punish this sort of defense, but he's 19, he will undoubtedly improve here. Screen defense is something he really needs to make a big jump in. Navigating around screens is difficult, and there's a reason why pick and roll is still the most common play in basketball, but too often he got taken out by contact. I hope he gets back to the fundamentals a little bit defensively. His scrappiness stood out against Cleveland, but even in this play where he forces the guard right back and nearly gets a steal, it ends with him being blown by and giving up the foul. Being Mr. 94 feet doesn't really interest me if this is what happens more often than not, and it did happen more often than not in Summer League. Most frustratingly, some of his play was just downright lazy. You can't give him credit for this great chase down block without giving criticism for this lackluster screen defense. Or question why he's so flat-footed here when his man attacks off ball. Or worry about his lack of help onto drivers when he's clearly in position to at least stick an arm out. And he loses his shooter with alarming ease here. Josh Christopher is 19. He's played 15 games of college basketball and 5 Summer League games. Those of you who watched my video on Jay Sean Tate before last season will remember that although I was really high on him, I did have criticisms about his turning speed and footwork, as well as what I called lazy help defense. Those worries evaporated immediately once I saw him in a Houston jersey. Christopher is obviously a few years younger, it will take more time, but he can make strides too. This was a more negative video than I would have liked, as fans were all rightfully very excited about what the Rockets pulled off in the draft. 3 of the guys they grabbed looked like real gems to me. Christopher I'm far less convinced about. I worry his 3-point shot will never come good, which restricts his ceiling. His defense overall in Vegas was not what was advertised by Rafael Stone, and if that doesn't become more consistent and disciplined, his floor isn't very high either. But he showed lots of positives. His passing, his driving ability, his mid-range game was all very impressive, and I have no problem with him starting from there and stretching outwards over time. My biggest question is what his role will be. Without the shooting and with his current shot selection and tunnel vision, I don't think he fits on court next to Houston's plethora of guards. He flashed some lead ball handling skills, but is it enough to be a high usage player off the bench, helping to lead a second unit? I tried to gauge expectations on Twitter by comparing him to recent Rockets bench ball handlers, and the large consensus was he'll be better than Austin Rivers, but not as good as Eric Gordon. There's a fairly big gap between the two, as Rivers was dotted around teams on low-value contracts, but he was a very good 7th man in his first season in Houston and was great against the Warriors in the playoffs. Whereas Gordon at his best is a legitimate 6th man of the year contender and could start on many teams. If Christopher slots in somewhere between these two, Houston picks someone who will have a long NBA career, and doing that at 24 is always a win. Thanks for watching this video. I currently have a much more positive long read on Alperen Şengün if you want some more optimism. You can head over to tonrockets.com for that, and if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @NathanFogg1. Give me your thoughts on Josh Christopher as we count down the days until the start of the new season.